Greetings and salutations, friends. I'm Prince Amari, gay love coach, matchmaker, and hypnotherapist. And in this video, we're going to talk about personality compatibility in relationships. But first, I invite you to take my gay compatibility quiz at the link below, above, beside the video, wherever it happens to be based on where you're watching, to find out your personality type and which type is most compatible with you. Again, you can take that at the link wherever the link happens to be, based on where you're watching it right now. So let's jump in. Personality compatibility. I know you're probably wondering what's going on with this finger. I was cutting some sweet potatoes and I found out that you can in fact cut yourself with a potato peeler. So yeah, we're walking. Personality. Most people are not necessarily aware of this, but when we think of personality, like we're actually talking about three different things usually. And let's define what personality is in general, and then we'll talk about those levels. So generally, personality is the performance of your identity, if you want to think about it that way, right? All the things that make you you in terms of how you feel, how you express yourself emotionally, your general perspective on the world, and kind of like what makes you tick. So in terms of the three levels, the first is what we call dispositional traits. And these are those traits that you were born with that are practically stable over time. So it doesn't mean they don't change at all, but they're not likely to change very much. So for example, if you are an extrovert, you were likely born an extrovert, especially if you're a high extrovert. You were likely an extrovert from the moment you came out of the womb. And over the course of your life, say like you're an 82% extrovert at birth, maybe you'll shift to an 85 or 78% extrovert, but it's not gonna change that much over the course of your life, for example, okay? So that's dispositional traits, the traits that are stable, static, you're born with them, they don't generally change over time. The second level of personality is what we call characteristic adaptations. And this is the way that you predictably adjust to your environment or your circumstances. So you can think of this like when you're at school, you behave a certain way. When you're with certain friends, you behave a certain way, right? You learn how to adapt to the situation or the circumstance. And that adaptation is characteristic of you, because the way that you adapt to that particular situation might be different from the way that I would adapt to it. So characteristic adaptation is level 2. The third level of personality is called narrative identity. And this is essentially the story we tell about ourselves and the character or the perspective that we take in our own stories. So do we see ourselves as like the victim in our own stories, for example? Do we see ourselves as the hero in our own story? And this is particularly the story about you and your identity over the course of your life. So it's how you make sense of who you are when you're telling other people or even yourself stories about who you are. So those are the three levels. This video, we're primarily gonna focus on that first level, dispositional traits. So let's get into the meat. What are the dispositional traits? And then how does that influence our compatibility and relationships with other people? So first things first, there are 5 categories of dispositional traits when we're talking about scientifically validated personality, right? So 5 categories. All 5 of these are spectrums. So it's not like you are a type of person or not. This is a trait and you are along a scale, okay? So we're all along a spectrum of each of these 5 trait scales. The first is introversion and extroversion. And what we're really talking about here, most people think, oh, if you're an introvert, you're shy. If you're an extrovert, you're loud and boisterous. And it's not exactly that. On a very concise level, extroversion is our capacity, potential for positive emotionality. Okay, so all those positive emotions, excitement, enthusiasm, desire, all of those things are really what extroversion tells us. The more extroverted we are, the more expressive we are of positive emotion. The more introverted we are, it's not negative emotion. We are more grounded and more chill. So think of introversion as like stable, steady. I don't necessarily get excited about things as quickly or easily. Things don't get me, wired in an excitement, positive sense. I might go through a positive experience and be like, oh, that was really cool, but I'm not necessarily jumping off the walls, okay? So that's the first scale. The second scale is neuroticism versus emotional stability. And this is the opposite. So now we're actually talking about negative emotion, right? Neuroticism is how expressive we are and how much we tend to feel negative emotions. So anger, anxiety, fear, stress, sadness. The more likely we are to focus on the negative in the situation, that's what a higher level of neuroticism tells us. And we're going to be more expressive of that negativity as well. Emotional stability is not saying that we're positive, right? Which is what extroversion would tell us. Emotional stability tells us that we're more grounded, more flat. The negative things don't affect us as much. So just like introverts are going to be more reserved and chill when something positive happens, people who are emotionally stable are going to be more reserved and chill when something negative happens. Okay? So that's neuroticism and emotional stability. The next scale is openness versus practicality. So openness is our openness to new experiences. It's how much we tend to be curious about the world around us, how much we desire to explore new things, to experience adventure, right? To change necessarily, right? And at the opposite end is practicality, which is how much we are preferencing of what we already experience, what we already know, things that we can see, touch, taste with our five senses. It's less of a mental curiosity and more of a I trust what I already know kind of trait. Okay. So some people are very much like, I want to do the things I'm already used to doing and just kind of like stay with my familiar surroundings, people, habits. And then others are going to be more like, oh, I want to try something new, do something new, taste something new, see something new, right? So openness to new experience. The next trait is agreeableness versus disagreeableness. And so agreeableness tells us how much we are likely to put other people's needs, emotions, or desires above our own, and how much we tend to be more conciliatory when it comes to other people. So we're more likely to, make nice, play nice, observe, the different rules and regulations on a social level of not rocking the boat. Whereas disagreeableness, we're going to be much more focused on what we want to do, want to have, want to be, where we want to go, our own needs and desires and preferences. And we're not going to put as much weight into what other people think or what other people care about. So the more agreeable we are, the more we have a need to be liked. The more disagreeable we are, the more we just don't care what other people think about us. Okay. And then finally, we have conscientiousness. So how much we're goal oriented, how much we follow through on the things we say we're going to do, how much we respect rules, regulations, etc. And then responsiveness is the other side of the scale. And this is how open-ended we are, how spontaneous we might be in terms of like what we need to do and when we need to do it. So this is not spontaneous, like open to new experience, adventurousness. This is spontaneous, like, am I going to do one thing at a time in the order as prescribed, or am I going to kind of do things in a random way, right? Maybe I'm just not going to follow the rules or the process. So each of these 5 scales, we are all going to be at a different place. It's not one thing or the other. I'm not agreeable or disagreeable. It is levels. And so every single person that you meet is going to be at a different place along that spectrum in relationship to you. Okay. So when we think about this in terms of compatibility, what does this all mean? How does this impact our relationships on a practical level? Well, first things first, compatibility is 2 parts. We have the dispositional compatibility, which means here are my traits and where I stand on each of the spectrums, and here are yours. And here's how those are going to interact based on where we naturally sit, right? Often when we're looking for advice on personality compatibility, we're often looking for dispositional compatibility. Tell me who's best for me based on who I am. But the other piece of personality compatibility, let's call this expectational compatibility. So this is going to be based on your experiences, your preferences, right? So you might be someone who's highly agreeable, for example. You tend to have a need to be liked, and you tend to put other people's needs before your own. The closer we are on any of these scales to someone else, the more we tend to feel like we get them because they tend to operate on an emotional level in similar ways that we do, right? However, if you are someone who, based on experience, you realize that you tend to not stand up for yourself as much, people tend to take advantage of you, you might prefer to be with someone who is less agreeable, right? More disagreeable than you are, so that they will have an easier time saying no, having, higher boundaries or better boundaries, right? Also, people who are more disagreeable tend to make more money because they stand up for themselves, they ask for what they want and what they need, and they tend to get it because they ask. So you might, on an expectational level, want to be with a partner who's going to be more disagreeable, right? And so, in other words, what I'm saying is we have to look at both. We have to look at your disposition compared to their disposition and see what is going to occur based on those differences or not. And we also have to look at what you expect from a partner and how different a person is to your expectations or not. Because your satisfaction on a romantic level is not based on your disposition, it's based on your expectation. And the difference between expectation and reality is how satisfied or disappointed you are. And so the more that our expectations match up or line up with reality, the more satisfied we're going to be in a relationship. So dispositional compatibility, in other words, when you're looking for all the advice on what to do and who to be with, if you don't already know what your expectations are, the advice you're reading is probably not going to necessarily be good for you. And so it's a lot better if you have the specifics by either, taking some tests and assessments to figure out what you actually expect, not just what your personality is and what people recommend, or by working with a professional like a matchmaker, like a dating coach, who can help you both identify your dispositional traits and your compatibility needs, but also your expectational ones. So again, if you want to have some dispositional advice in terms of who would be a good fit for you, check out the Compatibility Quiz at the link. And if you want some specific advice, you can also schedule a consultation with me also at that same link. And if you want to go even deeper into personality compatibility, including the other levels, I have an entire masterclass that you can dive into on this. And you can also check that out at the link in the video. So that's it for now. See you next time. Sending you love, peace, and glitter.